I feel like I'm fighting to give somebody an opportunity. I'm fighting for a work permit or a green card or citizenship. I'm restoring somebody's rights. I feel now that is, I call it happy law, right? At the end of the day, there's a happy ending to this thing. There's a happy outcome.
I'm excited to introduce you to Hector Quiroga, an immigrant from the country of Colombia who overcame many obstacles to reach his version of the American dream. Today, he dedicates his life to helping others legally enter the country and, like him, become a good citizen and build a good life, maybe even a great one. Hector faced many challenges, including learning English, graduating from college and then law school, becoming a father, and managing huge amounts of crippling student debt. He opened a law firm and gave everything he had to it, but despite his all-out effort, something was truly holding him back. He couldn't figure it out, but despite long hours and taking on scores of clients, Hector had only his own bankruptcy and exhaustion to show for his efforts. In this episode, and in his new book titled Prove Them Wrong, Hector tells how he discovered and then overcame his own dark secrets, and tells how once he did that, he moved from bankruptcy to being the CEO of a huge, successful multinational law firm. Today, he's a dedicated husband, a father to 7 beautiful children, and a beacon of hope for many who are facing immigration hurdles and or personal battles as well. His story of overcoming adversity is powerful, and it holds lessons that I think will be instructive for many. So if you wouldn't mind, please just take a moment to subscribe and then enjoy this really fascinating conversation with immigration lawyer Hector Quiroga. Hello, Hector, and welcome to How We Change the World podcast.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you to all your audience who are tuning in.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm very moved by the work that you do with to help immigrants to this country. You're an immigration attorney and the CEO of, which is also your last name, Quiroga Law Office. Not sure if I said that correctly. You want to help me?
You got it.
Quiroga?
Yes.
I'm always nervous when I have to pronounce a name that I'm not really good with. And we're here to talk about a few things, one of which is the intricacies of immigration law and policy and maybe the impact on real life humans that are trying to immigrate to our country. You're an immigrant yourself, so you come at this from not only the legal perspective as an immigration attorney, and you have a very large firm in several locations, so you serve a lot of people, which we're going to learn more about. But also, so you come at it from the immigration legal aspect, but also as a person who immigrated from another country, which happens to be Colombia. So those are all things we're going to talk about. But thank you for joining me and really for providing this insight, as a person who has been through the immigration process and know what it means to a person.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I also will say the other subject we're going to talk about is this very poignant book that you wrote. I have a copy of it right here. It's called Prove Them Wrong. I read a lot of books as a person who conducts podcast interviews. Usually I sit down and I'm kind of strap myself in to do some, intense reading. And this one, I found myself just reading because I couldn't put it down. And there's no exaggeration in that. It's about your journey. It's about your journey from immigration all the way through really building a successful company in this country.
Yeah, it's been a trip. I mean, coming in and not speaking English, right? So this is 2000, and really knowing banana, what's your name, and then what is the restroom, right? That was the extent of my English to putting myself through college and law school and building a firm and having grown. The firm now is one of the fastest growing law firms in the United States, and by Inc. 5000, and this is the fourth this is the 4th year that we have this award, and so it's
really?
it's very much a good thing. But I tell the story of coming from all of that and overcoming a lot of demons really inside of you that kind of holds us back, and so that is the perspective of all of that.
Well, sometimes, they say that by going very personal and very specific with something, you can reach a universal audience. And that's what happened with this book, I think. And I think people who don't care at all about immigration, who don't care about, or not that they don't care, but that's not their focus, or they might not normally pick up a book about immigration or even an immigrant and what they went through, they will possibly find themselves in this book, because I wouldn't have expected to relate to it so intensely. But you go through all the things that just prevented you, and some shadow, dark secrets from yourself, really, that you discovered that helped you be successful, not even in immigration necessarily to do with that, but just to do with overcoming our inner trauma, I guess, and facing it, and how that can, free us up to be much happier and more successful in life. And everyone can pretty much relate to that.
Yeah, I think that what resonates, and I think it's just kind of how most people have told me they have enjoyed the book, is that we all go through some sort of process of discovery, and we start finding out that there are certain things that happen to us, some very severe, some not as severe, right? That kind of holds us back, and we don't even notice. And so if you look, and for the people listening, the cover of the book is basically the outline of the book. And so you have a mountain, and you got an individual going up the mountain, and there's the American flag is kind of like on the middle of the mountain, and then you continue going. If you look, you have a backpack. The person has a backpack. So if you and the flag is not that far from him, and so it's like you have this goal, but you're carrying all this weight on you. Now, for whatever reason, we hold on to that weight so much. We believe we need whatever is in that backpack to make this big trek, but the trek is not that far. So why are you carrying all this weight with you? Wouldn't it be a lot easier if you just take the backpack off and just make it to your goal? Look at that trauma, take it off you, and just be able to move. And now, this is a lot easier said than done. Another thing that I find interesting about the cover is that when we go around life and you tell someone, hey, I find out that I have a self-esteem issue, or I find out that I really do care a lot about what other people think. That we tend to hear things like, I don't care at all what people think, but internally we care, right? Everybody seems to be able to spot your problem. Everybody else is able to see the backpack in a way or another. But yourself, you can kind of keep twisting, and the backpack's in the back, and you're like, what are you talking about? I just look in the back and there's nothing, right?
That's a great analogy.
And so I think that's what I was trying to express through my own life. And it's like, I had this thing there that I could never really even think it was an issue, right? So just to get to it,
go ahead.
I was sexually abused by a close, kind of like a closer individual to our family when I was very young. It was it's hard because the memory is very, 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 it's very painful. So you tend to suppress memory. And so in the book, I express kind of like I kind of go over the book about what happened in one event, but this really happened for a period of 8 months. Just kind of like this happened continuing.
I didn't know that from the book. You don't say that.
No, we just working with editors and all the things. It's not a book about sexual abuse, but it was like one event that we needed.
I see.
So what happened is that I had a family. My parents are lawyers, and in Colombia, and so they were successful. My father was a successful lawyer, and so we have typically, it's like a vacation home. We would go to the vacation home, and so there was a caretakers of this vacation home that had a son that was about 18, 19 years of age, who was my abuser, right? And so
and you were like, I think 8 or so?
8 or 9 years old. It was what this happened. So I would go And so we would go every weekend because that's kind of typically what happens. And Colombia is, the weather is just about the same through the entire year. So you can go to your vacation home. And I would stay in our vacation home pretty much the entire summers. And so I was there a lot. And so this happened. And for the longest time, I didn't want to say anything. For about 8 months that this went down, it was about 8 months to a year. I was very troubled. I was told, if you say anything, I'm going to hurt you and I'll kill you. And, deep down, I didn't actually believe that because I felt like, no, actually, my family would protect me. I was not worried about it. What I was worried about.
His father worked for your father, essentially,
That's right.
correct? Yeah. So very close relationship. Yeah.
It was a very close relationship, and so I felt that what I was afraid of was precisely my father and mother, my father's reaction to this. It's like, oh, he's gonna kill this guy. So when I told the story, the reaction that I got was very different from what I had expected.
And you told it to who?
I told it first to my mother.
Your mother.
I said, Mom, this is what's going on. And she was quiet. And she said, don't tell anyone, right? Then I mustered enough to tell my dad. I mean, the understanding with my mom was she was going to tell my dad. But then I also told my dad, and he said, I just remember it was obviously it was in Spanish, but it was very much like, you should never talk to anyone about this. And it was more like the important thing is that you don't keep liking it. So my dad was very afraid that somehow I had become homosexual because of this, right? And
this was at the time when you were still that young age, right?
This is at the time, right?
That was very courageous to even come and tell them. Yeah.
So So I sort of felt betrayed very much again, right? And I didn't realize this until later, right? It was like, they said, you know what? Just don't talk about it.
Stuff it.
Stuff it, shove it under the rug. This is very Latino, right? This is a very Latino.
Oh, it's everywhere, believe me.
Yeah, it is. But
it is, but yeah.
It's in my culture as well. And that
for
is,
sure.
You don't acknowledge the feeling, you don't. And so there was no police report, there was no medical report, there was no psychology, psychiatry, none of that. It was like, just shove it down. And so I did. I did, and I never talked about it and just sort of left it. And so it was until later to trying to open in this firm and trying to just get off the ground that I started realizing I was working very hard. I was putting so many hours. I was just working very, very hard. And I explained why I ended up being a bankruptcy lawyer. And I was going with bankruptcy. And I was working and working and working. And I had a lot of clients. But then I realized I had a lot of clients is because I was the cheapest lawyer in town by a long shot. I was doing it so inexpensively that pretty much every case I took, I was losing money on. So no wonder why I ended up bankrupt myself. And I talk about the whole process of bankruptcy.
It's so sad. It's like really,
But how many times do we? And so there's a worth issue, right?
You're
great things for your clients, for the people you're doing. If you're selling a product, you're selling a great product. But in an effort to sell, you keep lowering the price. There's a point where you're not even doing it at cost, and then you just keep going down and down and down, and that's what I was doing. And so, and I was deluding myself. I was delusional, thinking, "Oh, I'm just this great lawyer, and I have this many clients." Look, but it's like, well, you're like a public utility because you are really the cheapest. By the time I was doing like bankruptcies, Chapter 7 for like $400, and then I would do the discount on that. It's like $400,
which is what many lawyers charge per hour. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, back then,
and even back then, but it was like, and the amount of work I would go to, or I would do all of that for that amount, and so it was when I started looking for help. There was a point where I expressed on the book that I was like, I don't know where I went wrong on this because I had good grades. I had learned English well enough to at least pass the bar exam. I had done everything. There was a point where it's like, oh, you just need to work more hours. And it's like, there is no more hours to work.
Plus you
like,
have children, which you have, you're married with.
I had kids.
Yeah.
I had kids, and Casey had two kids that I came into their life, and I raised them, and then we have children together.
Casey, your wife, yeah.
Casey's my wife, and she's also a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But we both were just, honestly, we just couldn't put more hours.
Right.
To the point where it was, I know there's 168 hours in a week, and it felt like I was putting 160. I mean, I was
nothing left.
There's a point where you go, it's not about more hours. It's also not about cutting costs, and I go about this in the book, but how I just completely, I mean, we were couponing, and we got rid of all TV antennas, or whatnot,
everything,
cable and everything else. I got rid of the trash service because I was collecting the trash and taking it to the dumpsters myself.
And you're both working lawyers, full time.
Right?
Yeah.
And you start getting a sense something's wrong, because when you are a bankruptcy lawyer, I mean, you have this beautiful license to ask very personal questions to people within 5 minutes. And so people will come in and I'm like, okay, well, how much is your mortgage? And what is your interest rate? And what is your down payment? And tell me about your car loan, and tell me about your credit cards. And do you have a Victoria's Secret account? Because they typically had that. And it's just, you get really, really personal, really fast with your finances.
Yeah.
And how much money are you making, right? Because income. And we start realizing that most of the people we're helping were making a lot more money than we were.
Wow.
And so it was really like staring you in your face, right? But somehow, again,
still,
like
the backpack.
You don't see it. You just don't see it, right? You just don't see it. And so it was not until I said, look, I don't know, but I'm going to quit. I start thinking about, do I teach Spanish? Right. I have a law degree. Maybe I can go teach in a high school or something. Now, the book will tell you I was born to be a lawyer. I think I was born to be an immigration lawyer. I just didn't know the immigration piece then. I just thought I was born to be a lawyer. I think a lot of the growing up, my parents being lawyers, there was an expectation that I would be a professional. Architect, engineer, doctor, lawyer, one of those things. My parents never really said be a lawyer, but I think I was born to do this. I really love it. Irrespective of their profession, I think I really wanted to do it.
Interesting, yeah.
So I was very sad about that. But then, so for me to say, let me go teach Spanish was kind of a big thing, because
huge.
I learned English. I fought myself through undergrad. I fought myself to get into law school. I was denied 7 times admission. I don't talk about this in the book. I was denied 7 times admission to law school because they said, your English is not good enough. Which is funny, because that same school on the undergrad had just given me an economics degree with honors. So I was like, wait, it's good enough for economic honors.
Right.
But
makes
it's
no
not
sense.
English.
Makes no sense.
It didn't make sense, right? And so I had to fight myself for that, gain admission. Now, by the way, I ended up teaching law in that same law school as an adjunct professor.
Just as an exclamation point at the end. But
yes.
Anyway.
So there's a little bit of this prove them wrong thing that really kept sort of filling me up to do this. And so, but it was when I said, look, I tried everything. Yeah. And there was a practice management advisor that we met. And he's the first one who says, but there is something very deep here. And he sort of exposes the fact that this sexual abuse and this self-worth problem may be lingering. And I had not talked about this.
Well, he got you to say it, right? I mean, obviously he didn't know, but how do you think that he recognized that that's what the issue was? Because you were trying to get help with how to grow your immigration business, right? Or no, I don't even know if you're in immigration yet, but you were just your bankruptcy firm at the time. Yeah. How did, I know you went through a lot of training with, different processes with this organization that he runs, I guess. But what did people see in you? Because wasn't there sort of a group who all said, come on, tell us what it really is. Yeah. What was it that they were seeing, right, without knowing that it was sexual abuse or even a deep secret?
I honestly think it was just my inability to change my pricing. I mean, it was like, but why are you doing it so inexpensively? $400? Are you
Oh,
serious? Like we charge that an hour, and you're doing like
10,
30 hours
20,
of
yeah. Oh,
work
30.
for what we charge on one. And I would be,
Oh,
and so it's like when you have an injury and somebody just kind of touches on it and you're really
yeah,
reactive to it, I
yeah.
think they can see that. And that's what I'm talking about the
Ah,
backpack. They were like,
yeah.
but why? And it's just like, he doesn't want to change his price. And it was like, that's not the issue. The issue has to be something different, but it's not the
I
price.
see. Wow.
Why would you not raise your pricing? You don't raise your pricing because you don't believe it's worth it, right? I
You
didn't
don't
want
think
to raise
your self-worth, you're saying.
exactly. It's an
Yeah.
issue of self-worth. And I think, right, that they start picking up on that. And he said, like, there's gotta be something because it's irrational almost,
Yeah,
right?
you
You got
have,
all these lawyers around going, we charge this an hour. What's the problem? We've been talking for this for over an hour. And you
yeah.
insist that you don't want to change the price. And so, look, I blame it on the market. I blame it on, oh,
Yeah.
well, I live in Washington. So, okay, Washington, the ones that the market goes by. Well, let's look it up. No, that's not what the market goes by. Well, it's just because I'm the only Hispanic lawyer. It has nothing to do with race at all. Like there's Hispanic attorneys who charge just as much. Why is it that? And so the excuses became. I started to see what they were for. They were
Yeah.
excuses.
Yeah.
They were stories that I was telling myself to continue to justify the conduct, which is charge cheap, right?
Yeah.
And so I was doing it for less than even bankruptcy preparers do it for people who. So there's certain people in law that could help you with forms, right? And you
Right.
have this.
You were a form generator. I mean, you were
Yeah,
charging what a
I
form.
was. It would be more expensive for you to go to a form generator, to go
Oh
to a
man.
full vested lawyer who's going to harm you, and go to
Court.
million creditors and all of that. So that started the conversation, right? He said, what is it? What did happen? Did anything happen to you? Why did you feel so like this? And so the first thing was like, and truly my attitude was really like, well, this happened. Because I didn't know what else to say after like an hour of drilling, right? I was like, is that it? And it's like, good. Have you ever talked to anybody about this? Like a professional. Have you ever talked to a professional? And I said, no, I don't need to. I mean, this is a non-issue. I mean, I went to law school. I did, and so lawyers, we tend to be very egotistical, right? So we are very
Sorry,
into
you tend to be very what?
egotistical.
Oh, okay.
Our ego tends to be
strong.
like we put a lot of value in our rational and our thoughts and our thinking.
Sure, of course. It's not about feelings. It's about logic.
It's about
right.
The facts, ma'am.
Facts,
right? We're very much about the facts. Give me the facts. Feelings don't exist. And so to me, even through my legal training, this was really weird. But because I was at my wit's end, I was completely done of just struggling so much. I said, look, this guy is a professional. He's telling me to go to therapy, to find a counselor, a psychologist, something.
Yeah.
So fine, whatever, I'll go. So that was kind of the end of that. And so then I start going and I start talking, and I tell you the healing power of just talking, just talk it out, just talk. And that opened, then I can start doing a lot of healing, and then my worth starts growing, right? By the way, I was also struggling because it presents in different ways in your life. So for me, the clear one was price, right? But then the next one was my inability to delegate something. So basically, you don't trust, right? So the people that were supposed to protect me from
your
my
parents
didn't protect me, right? And that they removed the threat. Next weekend when I went back to the vacation home, they were gone.
Interesting. Right. So they fixed it, but they didn't know how to communicate to you. They probably had shame given the culture and the time when this happened. And this is such a common thing.
So I'm not here to necessarily attack my parents. I think they did the best they knew what to do.
They got rid of the threat.
They got rid of the threat.
Yeah.
Right? They did what they had to do. They just never really
Yeah.
And they I think if how you communicate to your child is important. And so they just ignored it. It was done, thread done. Let's keep on marching with life as it does not happen.
Right.
So what I received was, you're not worth protecting. Right. I thought, remember, one of the ways that I thought this was going to go down is that it was going to be this massive issue and it was going to be a fight and it was going to be horrible and potentially.
Your father was going to go attack and kill this guy and remove his
career that was very successful was going to suffer because of this, right?
Yeah.
And none of that happened, right? None of that happened. So my perception was all of that. But isn't here when the healing I go says, well, they did remove the threat. They did do that. And I was safe. After that, it didn't happen again, but I still felt like I was protected. So the people who were supposed to protect me didn't. This is when I had a hard time. So go back to the business, I remember hiring somebody to help me with our internet, right? So they had a wireless router that come in, and I remember the guy would come in and try to fix it. And I remember just looking just to see what password and see if he was changing my settings. And I remember just be very aware of anything around me. So I couldn't delegate. I couldn't just hire somebody and say, will you please fix the internet? I'm going to go to court, and when I come back, hopefully it's fixed. No, I had to be there.
Making sure he did it properly, exactly. You mean?
Making sure he did it properly, making sure that... Same thing with my website, same thing with my Google AdWords, same thing with the printer that broke down. So what happens is it presents in different ways. And so do you have an assistant? Does your assistant, would you be okay with your assistant helping you with your email? Some people go, no way, I wouldn't be able to do that, right? But where is this coming from? It may not be necessarily from abuse or anything like that, but it could. Where is this trust issues coming from, right? I can't trust anybody because I've been burned pretty badly before. And so all of this help, and guess what happened to the business? Once I started learning to delegate and share, people will make mistakes. They will take your internet or your website and mess it up. And
it might make you look really bad.
They make you look really bad.
Yeah.
But it's different, right? Because delegation also means it's not advocating. It's you have to check in, you have to follow up.
Sure.
The right ways to delegate something. Once you learn that, you have to get trust though. If you don't trust something, if you don't trust anyone, you're not going to be able to delegate that well. And so what happened to the firm is to start growing and growing and growing because I was able to get my influence a lot better as I was working with these issues. And as I became an immigration lawyer, I went through a different transformation. And I was a bankruptcy lawyer, but really I was an everything lawyer. So our tagline was Quiroga Law Office. At Quiroga Law Office, we keep it civil because we did civil law. We didn't do any criminal law.
Very clever.
Although I did the DOI here and there, but really it was civil. So we did landlord-tenant, real estate, wills and estate, personal injury, immigration, family, and bankruptcy. It was kind of like the things.
You did everything.
And that too was a fear-based issue. What happened was I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust in abundance. I didn't trust on God and on the universe. My faith was so low because I was carrying with trauma that I cannot tell you how many times, somebody would walk in. We call it door lock law, right? They would come in and be like, hey, do you landlord tenant? Yep. So do that. And somebody would, hey, I had a car accident. Can help you with that. No problem, right? So I thought I was very well niched. And it was not through working with advisors and professionals and working on these things that I realized, look, I have to really figure it out. And it took me a while to figure it out. I was a bankruptcy lawyer because we were bankrupt and we had to taught ourselves. We taught ourselves, even though I never took a bankruptcy class in law school. Casey did. And she kind of taught me a lot of it, that I was kind of a bankruptcy lawyer by accident.
By default. Yeah.
Right. And then I really need to make it a decision. I made a decision, and I always loved being an immigrant and seeing the opportunity. I also got really beat down. I went to a lot of trials, family trials, bankruptcy
that
trials.
will do it.
And it really beat your soul down. Right?
Yeah.
I always marvel at my colleagues that are trial attorneys that go to trial constantly because it's
hurts your heart.
It's full combat. But then I don't mind. Listen, I enjoy a good fight, and I go to trial quite a bit. But I feel like I'm fighting to give somebody an opportunity. I'm fighting for a work permit or a green card or citizenship. I'm restoring somebody's rights.
Now you are. Now
I feel now that is, I call it happy law, right? At the end of the day, there's a happy ending
outcome.
to this thing. There's a happy outcome. When I was doing family, it's like you won. Somebody lost half of the kids, or now you got a divorce, and so half of your stuff now belongs to your spouse. Or you know what I mean? There was Bankrupt. It's like you.
It's all sad.
It was sad.
Very sad.
This was happy. So I really felt like this is it. I'm an immigrant. I live it. I had lived it on my own skin. And so I fell with that, and I found that calling, but then I had to stop taking every other case. And that was very hard because I had to spend like a good 8 years, 7 or 8 years, promoting everything under the sun. I had to clarify my message. I had to, and I can tell you, there were days that I was struggling to make payroll. I had a couple of assistants that I had to pay. And a estate planning would come in. It was, hey, would you do my estate plan? And I would have to say, I'm sorry, I'm an immigration lawyer now.
Even though you had no money, you had made this, but so you trusted yourself, though. You were trusting for the first time, not only in all these other people, but in yourself, to say, this is who I am, this is what I care about, and I know if I do enough and focus enough and give it a chance, it will happen. Right?
It will happen. And so through the story, as an immigration lawyer now, I start trusting, start attracting. It turns out that there is something called a U visa, and I don't know if you know what that is, but
I do from your book.
So for my book, so a U visa is that there's humanitarian cases, asylum, T visas for victims of trafficking. Somebody's trafficked into the country, we can get you a T visa. There's such a thing as a S visa, which is more like if you help testify and help the law enforcement. It's an S visa.
Then you get a visa.
U visa, which is for the victim of a crime. So the S is for like the informant kind of thing. The U visa is for the actual victim of a crime. So if you're a victim of a qualifying crime, typically it's a crime of violence, and a sexual assault is defined as a crime of violence.
That's one of the. So the sexual assault is just one of the crimes that you could be a victim. It's any crime you could be a victim of.
Exactly, it could be
and get a U visa.
Murder, domestic violence.
Okay,
it could be a kidnapping. That's many, and there are kidnapping and false imprisonment. Like if somebody locks you in a room. That is false imprisonment. Things kind of scale very quickly from there. So if you have this, you could qualify for this visa, and this visa could fix somebody's legal status and then eventually get you a green card. So many people can. Now they take forever. They take like right now 5 years to complete the process.
Yeah, it's just getting worse and worse.
It's taking forever. However, it is a possibility. And one feature that it has is that sometimes the children are victims. The child was born in the U.S., so the child is the victim of a crime, like I was, a sexual abuse, right? But the parents could derive the visa, even though the child doesn't need a visa because it's citizens. That's what we call it, derivatives. And so what ends up happening is that, I start putting information out there, kind of educating people on this. I start getting so many consultations, right? And I kind of fell back to those time of heaviness that I'm telling you about. Like everybody was broke because everybody was doing bankruptcy consults. Yeah, everybody's having a financial issue. It gets wearing after a while, but it kind of started getting like that. Like there's a week where I had, typically I had my legal work. I would do it Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday and Fridays I would be meeting with prospects, new clients, bringing more business into the firm. That's kind of how I broke my schedule. Well, there was I think I counted, it was like 3 months. It was like 90 days straight where all my Thursdays and Fridays, every single consultation, not only was a U visa, but it was a sexual abuse story of some kind.
And they had no idea about your background. They only knew you were an immigration attorney.
The book is the first time I talked to.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that too, but
the book it's kind of like, hey, this happened, you guys, right?
Yeah.
So it started staring me in the face a lot. And then I realized from my own story that, especially in my culture, we just don't talk about these things. We don't talk about these things. How many people have experienced something like this and are just not gonna even talk to a therapist like I did, right?
Yeah.
I come from parents who are educated, they were lawyers. I went to
Doesn't
school,
matter.
and I was blessed to even find an advisor to tell me, right? But how many people won't? Because even in those consults, I would say what happened, and the descriptions always would be like one sentence. This happened. That's it. It's a very painful thing. People want to talk about it. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of stigma about it. So I think about, like, ladies, how many times women are put in this position, as unfortunately as little girls, and then growing up to being teenagers and later, where sometimes we kind of normalize these things and we say, well, that's just happened, or it's a rite of passage, or whatever. I don't know. I'm not talking about food, but it could be just molestation, to even just sometimes how somebody looks at you.
Just harassment, just general harassment in the workplace. Yeah, definitely in the workplace.
The workplace, all those sort of things that happen, or things that are completely uninvited, or just things that could have been invited in the beginning and you stopped it because you didn't want to, and then it continued.
Right.
Just all of
many levels.
Yeah, that we don't talk about, and there is guilt, right? Because we feel like, just like I did for a long time, I felt like when you go through something like this, you feel you were a participant of it. You feel that maybe you attracted the predator.
Because people will accuse that, like women who claim rape, and what were you wearing is always the first question. It's like, come on.
Exactly. And you're going, like, what are you talking about? Well, what's funny is I went through the same thought process. Was it me? And really, the reality of the matter is this is a predator. This is a crime for a reason, including
especially against a child. Especially against a child. Yeah.
But then through these, I learned other things. Like, there's other ways that you can abuse, right? There could be a emotional abandonment, right? So one of the things that I learned is that, by my parents or the people who raised you, by not talking and acknowledging these things, it's kind of like a way of thinking. And I grew up in a time where it was very much like, 80s, 70s, 80s, we have concept of the latchkey kids, right? This is something that I learned. It was a US thing. I learned it through cases, really, and learning pop culture and these types of things. Like, we used to be giving our keys, and we go from school, and we would be home until our parents would come home, and you had these you had all of these hours at home. Sometimes you even cook meals for the parents coming in your years, or you were the oldest and you were taking care of, you were the babysitter for the rest of your siblings, and all sorts of issues happen. But you never felt connected with anybody. You never, you were given all this responsibility very, very young, and that you were not nurtured. Some of these things may be playing a role on what we do
on
today.
Self-esteem. So you're wait, I just want to clarify what you're just talking about, because you're saying, at first we're talking about sexual abuse, but you're saying there's other kinds of soft abuse or something, like emotional abandonment and things like that, or leaving latch, that can also result in the kind of self-esteem issues that you experience, even though yours is more dramatic and pointed. Is that what you're discussing? Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so another type of case that we have is called VAWA, Violence Against Women Act. The Violence Against Women Act could also help men and women get some lawful status if they have certain issues. And so VAWA focuses not on the crime, but it focuses on abuse. And there has to be a domestic relationship. That could be marriage, right?
Parents.
Or it could be parents, right? It could be
siblings.
Could be a blood relationship. So it could be, and I don't want to get into legalities, siblings, it takes, there's different waiting times, different. But the point is, we got to focus on abuse. And so one of the things that we learn abuse is that it doesn't have to be physical, right? So some people say, well, when I say were you abused, we typically picture somebody with a black eye or something like that.
Oh, or physical,
It turns out that somebody who's extremely sarcastic and making fun of the other person all the time, right? It's like, well, don't you look fat today, right? It's like, oh, ha ha ha, I'm just kidding. That was just a joke. But really, it's a mean-spirited, right? Now, you start doing this constantly, right?
For a lifetime, yeah.
You can really turn somebody's self-esteem down. And it starts sort of spiraling, right? And so it kind of starts with like bad taste jokes like the one I just described, right? And then it goes more into, it's more personal. Hey, you, so-and-so. So it's more like a targeted. And then it's sort of like, it starts going on things like isolation, like the type of person who, hey, you shouldn't talk to your parents. I don't want you to talk to my parents. I don't want you to have any friends. I don't want you want to go out with your female friends to have a drink or going to a spa. No, I don't want you to do that. Right?
You're talking about a male spouse telling a female, his wife. Yeah.
Kind of what I see sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It happens the other way.
It does happen the other way too.
We call it toxico and toxica in the thing. And what is interesting is in my culture, that tends to be funny. When I say, hey, are you toxic? They're like, ha ha ha, yeah, I'm jealous. Yeah, but it gets to a point, it's like when you're like tracking somebody's moves, right? Like you're like, where are you?
Right.
You're supposed to leave work at 5:00 and it's 5:30 and there is a 15-minute, where are you? It starts getting very just, and so it starts happening. Then what we happen is we start getting into physical displays. So we're talking about the person throws the door or throws the cabinet or does something like that. It's not necessarily towards you, it's towards the environment around. And so that's very menacing, right? The person may be,
makes you feel unsafe.
Yeah, the person start, their spouse was sleeping when I had a firearm by the pillow, right? And so this person just felt very threatened by the fact that this was happening because, she saw him as a loose cannon and didn't know when something, even though he never grabbed the gun, never pointed at her, never even said anything, but just the fact that this was menacing, right? And they would have a fight and he would just look at it. He would just look at it. He wouldn't say anything, wouldn't even reach for it, but it was enough for you. You can see the tension.
There's nonverbal communication is very, And then because then there's no, I never said anything, right? I never threatened you, but the look, the presence,
so this happens, and it goes all the way to now physical contact. Right. And one thing I do say is from the very bad cases that I have experienced in my legal career, it's not, what happens is the person loses control. They get so mad that what happens is they push the person or they grab the person and they don't measure their strength, or maybe they're just, the adrenaline rush is such that they end up injuring the person without really intending. I don't think anybody, especially in a domestic relationship, there's maybe some cases right? Which is like, they didn't set out to commit murder here. The situation spiraled out of control where it could end up injuring somebody, right? So, for example,
are you talking about the victim spiraling control and hurting the?
No,
you're talking about the other person.
Yeah, I'm talking about the person that they might be jealous. The person came late,
and they might push someone or hurt them.
Because you do talk to sometimes these persons after the fact, and they actually are regretful for what happened, but they just didn't have control. The issue is that you can end up hurting, killing somebody, and really tearing somebody emotionally down so bad. And so I don't think we talk about these things, right? Like I think there's tolerance, right? That somebody may have a bad day and made a bad joke.
It's gray. It's a gray area until it's a pattern that is undeniable.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So I sort of started learning that there's other kinds of abusive relationship that too can turn you down, and it can show up in different areas of your life, right? Like, it can turn out in your business. You don't trust, not necessarily because there was sexual abuse, but you don't trust because you were placed with the early on responsibility of raising your siblings, and didn't really get any ability to go do activities or have fun like anybody else. So you're associating responsibility with the burden and no reward. So we have to kind of look and see what messages we learned as we were growing.
I want to interrupt you for one moment to ask a couple quick questions. You're talking about, first question was, when someone is that way in a marital situation, but they didn't grow up with any problems, right? Like you did, perhaps, you know, or any of the other latchkey or, you know, some of the emotional abandonment issues that we're talking about. But it just happens in marriage, so that can have the same effect on a person. You can have abuse that
you can. I think what happens is we learn it's hard, especially when we talk about putting boundaries or limits.
Right.
Where is my boundary? What's my limit? And if you didn't develop this skill,
got it.
Because, you know, we grew up, well, from what I understand, you could have grown up like I did, which is like you don't speak back to your parents.
Mm-hmm.
What I say is law. You don't question, right? Or if you do, then I would be slapped across the face, right? That was a very disciplinarian type of way. And so you're worried about putting limits because you're still associating that. And so what happens is you got a marriage that is spiraling and you can't really place limits, you can end up in another situation.
Okay.
So that's one way I see it.
But so let's tie that back to immigration, because you started talking about this U visa, right?
Right.
And is that someone, so somebody who is an immigrant in this country who comes to you and first of all, why do they come to you? And you know, because we didn't know, are they coming to you for a green card? Or are they coming to you because they're being deported? Because what I'm trying to tie together are these two issues of someone requiring, you know, protection because they're being physically or emotionally abused, and immigration, because you're tying those two themes together here, right?
So there are two kinds of immigrants, really. There's an immigrant who is outside of the country and they say, hey, I would like to go live in the United States. How do I get a visa? And then they want a lawyer and they contact us.
And that might be, I'm just going to start. So that could be where they might get a U visa because they're suffering from some of these abuses that we just talked about.
Well,
possibly.
For a U visa, it has to happen in the United States.
Okay, okay.
Right? But if it's outside the United States and you're fear of prosecution and you're fleeing, then that's asylum. Different kind of
different issue.
Qualified, right?
Okay.
But that's when they first contact the firm and say, hey, I want to work there. The second sort of group is the individuals that are already in the United States.
Okay.
They came, we don't know how, they could have crossed the border because they were fleeing a situation. They didn't want to wait for paperwork. They didn't have money for a lawyer, so they crossed. Or they were in a visa, like a tourist visa, and they just didn't leave, right?
That happens a lot.
Overstayed the visa.
Sure.
Happens. And so what happens is they're like here and they go like, well, but now I don't have a work permit. I don't have a social security number.
Right.
It's very difficult. How can I fix this problem? Right. And so I held them through that process. And so a lot of times we get attacked. I mean immigration attorneys, because we are helping individuals who are undocumented. So they're like, why are you helping documented individuals? Well, we're helping them precisely fix this issue and become documented. We're part of the solution. We're trying to. We wish we could help everybody, but we don't. And so on these meetings, and when we start talking about, well, tell me about your life, and you know, did you marry anybody? Because family is one of the ways. You have a spouse that is a citizen, maybe they have a petition for you.
Right.
You have children. Were you ever a victim of a crime? Is anybody in your family part of armed forces? Because there's some military benefits and paroles that we can apply for. So we go through a process of interview to try to figure out where can we help this individual. Do you have a potential employer that would be potentially petition for you that can happen through some types of visas? And so our job is that, but it's through that we start detecting, wow,
this abuse.
There's a lot of abuse. There's just a lot of abuse.
So, okay, I'm still missing one point, and that is, is it sort of because you wrote, we're talking about two things that are different and related, and I really want to tie them more and more. They're completely related, because you said you started really noticing that these people are coming to you, that so many of them had some type of abuse. Is that, first of all, what made you decide to write this book and tell your truth? So that
was a big factor of it. It was kind of the catalyst of saying, look, why is the universe? Why is God putting me in this position? Why did this happen to me? You know, this is
right.
Was I was I supposed to learn something out of this? Was it,
Yeah.
or it could be just like my parents told me, just shove it under the rug and ignore it forever. It's like,
Right.
there's gotta be something. And so your mess is your message. There is a mess in your message. And I thought, I gotta tell them all this mess. And I felt that, especially when it comes to sexual abuse of men,
Mm-hmm.
it seems to, it is embarrassing. Perhaps the connection my father was making, which is like, would that this make him homosexual, right? There's a lot
Yeah.
it's like it needs to be said, especially for somebody who had been able to achieve some success, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's financial or being able to become a lawyer. And I think my community and really the world at large needs to hear these type of healing stories. So at least I can light the world with someone, to at least inspire someone to go to a therapist and start talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And find that. So,
yeah. And have you found more clients coming to you? I don't know when this book actually came out. Is this a new book? I should know that, but I don't.
No, the book came out in Thanksgiving. So it's a.
Oh, but it's this year though.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. So it's new. I would call it new.
Yeah.
I just wondered if clients like read this and say, can you help me because this is my case, and can I get a visa or something?
So through the promotion of the book, we're getting known, and people are hearing about this, and some people didn't know a U visa existed. Now the book is in English, so the translation is coming out to Spanish, and I think that's gonna also help quite a bit. And I can, through my networks and the people and prior clients, I'll be able to distribute it more. So.
Wow. Did your wife know about this before you went to therapy? Because I know it was her idea for you to talk to that guy in the first place.
Yeah, so she did. I mean, before we get married, I think she's the only person I told. I said, and I remember the conversation. I remember my voice shaking, and it was very much like
very hard even to tell someone you trusted.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, look, if you want to spend the rest of your life together, I want you to know this, right? And I remember her. She got teary-eyed. She said, I'm so sorry this happened to you. But that was the end of it.
Yeah.
So here and there, I would kind of describe a little, but she learned a lot about what happened in the book.
I think, oh, really? She learned it in the book. That's interesting because what I find that so relevant because you're saying you've got this backpack on, you can't see it, but either can the people who love you the most.
Right.
It's,
Well, they know how painful it is, right? I mean, I think it's just Americans especially, we here don't like to talk about uncomfortable
right.
subjects.
That's why it's so impressive that you've done that because you give permission to people with any kind of trauma background to recognize that something could be holding them back and it took a lot of courage, I have to say, especially as a man and from the culture you're from where it isn't accepted to come out and be so willing to help other people that you're willing to expose yourself. And I'm sure that by telling your story, there was some more healing that came from that.
And I'm really, it is my hope. It truly, sincerely is. It's very just, even if they don't have any kind of immigration experience, nothing, they read the book and go, you know what? I should just, this happened to me. Let me go talk to somebody. And just I'm telling you the healing effects of that and how it shows up in your life today.
Yeah.
It was, to me, it was wild. It was just wild.
I won't go into my story and I wasn't sexually abused, but this thing about the parents was really hit home for me and something that you want to, especially when you love your parents so much and they've gone, like you don't want to think negatively. You don't want to. And I see a lot of my sisters struggling with that, and it's just like you get to a certain age and it's like, this has been here a long time, and this,
You do. I did the boundaries. And then, again, I've said it here, I'm not here to necessarily paint my parents or my family a bad light.
No, it's not about that at all.
But it needed to be said. And I think, but there is this sense of almost this loyalty, right? It's like you're kind of like, but it's like, but if you don't talk about it, see, anything that is secret doesn't touch the light. You gotta let the light come out.
Yeah.
Anytime that you're gonna go fix anything, you at least grab a flashlight to and to be able to see it. And so you gotta bring light to it, and the way you do that is by speaking about it.
Well, if this legal thing doesn't work out, you can always become a therapist.
Hey, I don't know about that, but yeah.
Well, and honestly, let's talk about the success of your business. And, I hope we have a few minutes left to talk more about immigration. But I mean, you went from a bankruptcy lawyer who was bankrupt,
Yes.
you and your wife, and you have several. How many children do you have now?
We have 7 children.
7 children, yeah.
So
It's a beautiful family.
Thank you. So yeah, we went from, I mean, in the last decade, we went from, it was 1 employee, her, me, and 1 employee, to we are at 269 employees. We are in 3 different countries. We got 5 offices opened in the US. We're opening a couple of offices, and so we're very proud what we achieved.
Yeah,
so we're happy because it keeps growing, and we're giving a lot of value. And when you give value,
yeah,
your clients return the value because they refer you out, they talk about you. So yeah, the firm has grown up, and since then I became an investor, and I have opened other businesses. I don't talk as much about that on the book, but I own a couple of companies that are doing also successful. So
it's just
which is the American dream, right? It's to me, that's how I define it. You have the opportunity to do cool things like open a business, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And all of that just took off from being a bankruptcy lawyer who was bankrupt to all of this through your personal healing. Right. Yeah. Because you had all the skills. I mean, you knew that you were a hard worker. You taught yourself English. You knew you had that part, but you had all the right pieces and it still wasn't working. That's when it makes sense that there's something going on. Yeah.
It forced me to go seek help.
Yeah.
Because I felt at least that I was working all the time. It wasn't
doing everything you could.
I wasn't lazy.
Yeah. No.
I was reading the books. I was applying.
Yeah.
But something wasn't.
Yeah.
And so feel that way. Hey,
Yeah.
It shouldn't be this hard.
Well, I'm really grateful to you for doing all this, because I think it's just a lesson for all of us, regardless of what our issues are or what we're interested in or anything else. But let's switch a little bit of the time we have left to talk about immigration, because you do work with anyone who is like, for example, seeking asylum or trying to get, you said you deal with some people trying to get into the country, but I don't want to throw too much into one question, but what is the majority of the cases that you're working on? Are the people in this country already?
So we have what we call family, which is people in the country, but they're married or they have a family member that is a United States citizen or a local resident.
Mm-hmm.
We have our humanitarian work, U visas, T visas, BAGWA, what I mentioned, right? And asylum is one of them. And then the third one is what we call defense. And so defense is deportation defense, and then
deportation defense,
defense, and appellate and federal litigation. And so there are certain, for example, these time frames are waiting so long, and there's family members, the citizens say, hey, I married my spouse, I'm in this case for 5 years.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do? Sometimes we can litigate those things to try to move them quicker, but it's just a very interesting time. Elections coming up and things like that.
And it takes something that, sometimes elections really skew the understanding of things, because, I was doing some research on immigration, and we have the same percentage of immigrants in the country as 13.6% today as we had a decade ago. We don't have more immigrants today than we had a decade ago. And yet it's all we're talking about, and it's all everyone's shipping immigrants here and there, and so we have to really put things in proportion. Has that been your experience, that it's not really necessarily a bigger problem, or it's not the same problem as the numbers? What is it?
We blame the immigrant. We tend to blame the immigrant, but I think maybe some, and admittedly, some immigrants are to blame. They're not all. There need to be a vetting system. We need to and there are individuals who need to really follow our rules. I fully wholeheartedly agree with this. But we also need to look at the laws and the actual system that exists, because it puts us in positions like, I mean, really, the best option you got is that you were sexually abused. Is that how you get a green card? Is that really the only way?
Yeah.
Like, for individual who has not committing any crime. That's why, right? Or I have to tell somebody, hey, did you meet anybody? Are you single? Did you get married? Well, tell me about your love life, because
Like
that's
you
a way
shouldn't
to
have
do
to
it.
go through all that, is
I
what you're
mean,
saying.
really, do
Yeah.
I have to go through that?
Right.
That's
Right.
not. So our system, and it's so limited. It's so few visas are given. This is why the time frames, right? We had the visa bulletin, and those things just take what if a sibling. Me, Hector, if I want a petition for one of my siblings in Colombia, I'm a citizen. How do I do that? I can file a petition, but they'll be waiting 15 to 18 years before they can actually come.
Okay, so when people see, like, and I don't like the way they term this, like there's throngs of people, there's like, people make it look like there's, they get these high cameras that make it look like ants or, something coming in. Really dehumanizing. But people coming across the river from Mexico and everything. And it's, and by the way, Mexico is the largest group of people coming to the country. But the second and third ones are India and China, which nobody even mentions, and Philippines. Those are the legal ones. Okay. So, but why? Do you know why why is that the case? Like, why don't we have more visas available? Is it literally just about jobs and everything? Because, has that number of legal visas shrunk, or has it been the same over the last couple decades?
One is fear, right? Like if we open the borders and we give more visas, then there will be no employment here for the individuals that are here. The issue is that what kind of jobs are we talking about?
Right.
Are they really doing those kind of jobs? And the reality is, if we didn't have migrant workers, we would be in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So I think it can be better. I really do think that there is that system that needs to equalize. They're also worried that if you get a visa, that you're going to get some kind of government benefits, and it doesn't work like that. Really, for you to get real government benefits or some government benefits, most of them you got to become a citizen. You're not even a lawful permanent resident, but you have to become a citizen to be able to qualify to do some things. There are some qualifications, lawful permanent resident and stuff like that. So, but the fear exists, and it's very political, right? Because we don't want to pay taxes and help others, right? That's kind of my tax money shouldn't go there, and so there's a very that kind of dialogue tends to get people talking, and that's how you get votes. And so I think that's what happened.
But has the number of visas shrunk, or do we have a similar number that we've had for a long time?
No, we have. So this is set by Congress, and so once we have they are sort of staying the same. But what happens is the way it works is like, let's say, for example, we got 25,000 visas this year. What happens is first come, first serve. Well, we got 25,000 visas in 2024, but we have applications waiting since 2018. So we're going to give them, and this is why you see the wait times, because they can't. Now, it would take some reform to give more visas, to give more things. So one way that the government has been able to do, and I think any government, is not just the current administration.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Right. They can say, well, if there is some sort of like natural disaster or some sort of massive civil unrest in the case of Venezuela, for example, they can say, okay, we're gonna add for that, but it's outside the visa count. It's kind of like
that is outside the visa count.
Yes.
Okay.
So they try through other systems, or like DACA, for example, it didn't really make it as a law by Congress, and so it was an executive action, and so it's very shaky because it can kind of be ripped out any minute. So that's what happened. So
the people, and you're with all these employees and lawyers that you have in all your offices, what is the major work they are doing? Like, what is it for people who are in the country trying to get visas, or is that the biggest part of the work?
I think it's about 90%. Yeah.
So who would you want to have come to you as a lawyer? Like, who is like, what kind of person needs a lawyer? Because you don't always need a lawyer to get a visa.
But this is true.
Yeah.
But then if you are in the country undocumented, or you want to stay, you should probably be talking to my office, because I understand not everybody needs a lawyer to get a visa. I wholeheartedly agree.
Right.
You don't need a lawyer, but at least the strategy and checking whether or not this is going to work out, because we're talking about a 2-3 year wait.
Yeah.
If you do it wrong, you just wasted 3 years of your life going in the wrong direction. So it's becoming more important to talk to a professional to at least guide you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if the person is looking at maybe staying, a student, for example, who
Right.
just finished their schooling and wants to see if they want to stay in the U.S. and work here, they need to be talking to an immigration lawyer. Same with anybody who is in a visa or overstayed their visa, they probably should be trying to figure out how to
For sure. Yeah.
fix their status.
Yeah. Somebody who's overstayed their visa, they definitely need to get a lawyer because they could be deported at any moment. So if somebody's outside of the country looking to come into the country and doesn't know where to begin, first of all, what countries do you serve? Are they only Spanish speaking and English speaking?
Well, we help everybody all over. I got clients in Afghanistan, Germany, Canada.
Oh, you do? Okay.
But mostly, our firm works with Latino and Latin American countries, right?
Okay.
I'm Colombian and I speak Spanish.
Right. And many of your lawyers speak Spanish as well, correct?
That's correct, yeah. Just about the entire firm is bilingual. So then that's kind of what.
So if I'm living in Peru and I decide I want to live in the United States, I can call your office and say, where do I start? Like, how would I start the process?
Where do I go? Typically, we will ask you, well, are you a student? Do you have a student visa? Yeah. Did you meet anybody? Because if it's no, I just want to pack up and go.
Yeah.
Everybody will be calling us, and so we go through a qualification system to say, okay, are you closer to this or not?
See.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I just want people to understand like who should call you and how they can get help, and I'll definitely put your website on the and links on here to both the book and there's you have so many different offices, but I guess they could just call any of them to find out where to go. All right. Well, I've taken a good portion of your time, but I thank you so much because this has actually really been so helpful on a number of levels. And I think too, people who won't even know that they're going to be helped will be helped by that. And I really would, I'm going to hardly recommend this again. Prove them wrong. It's just extremely motivating and deep and vulnerable. And thanks so much for writing that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Best of luck as you move forward with this gigantic corporation you helped. It's really exciting. Thank you. Take care.